in maybe the earliest that they've ever announced inductees into the Hall of Fame. So clearly they are concerned about moving tickets and they want to get a head start on things. WWE this week announced that Dave Batista will be inducted into the Hall of Fame next year in Tampa over WrestleMania weekend, as will Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Sean Waltman as members of the New World Order, making this the second Hall of Fame induction for all four NWO members. Hall went in previously as Razor Ramon. I think Nash went in just as himself, and obviously Hogan did. He didn't go in as Mr. America, I could tell you that. And Waltman went in this year. I had to actually stop and think to myself when I heard that Waltman was going in for a second time, and I said, well, when did he go in the first time? And I had already forgotten, even though it happened earlier this year, that he was inducted as part of that DX induction this year at the Hall of Fame. Now, I believe he may be the first person to ever, again, I could be wrong, but he may be the first person ever to be inducted into the Hall of Fame in consecutive years, back to back. Batista, talk about him first. Batista was a virtual lock after retiring at this year's WrestleMania. You know, once you retire, it's just a question of when, not if. And so they didn't waste any time, and he's going in next year. And it's a well-deserved entry. You know, here's a guy who did not wrestle his first match. I knew he was young on the older side. But I was curious. I looked up, how old was he when he first wrestled a match? He was 30 years old. That's old for somebody to first get involved. Now, there's been people who have gotten in a lot later. You know, Diamond Dallas Page is someone who comes to mind. But Batista was 30 years old when he wrestled his first match in 1999. He was 31 years old when he was in OVW as part of the WWE developmental system. The same age as his fellow inductee this year, Kevin Nash, who was also 31 when he debuted in WCW. But here was this big, jacked up looking dude, great look. You know, he had like the bodybuilder look. He just was kind of like a weird guy to look at, which is good. I think that works to your advantage if you're trying to become a wrestler. And he ends up as the Deacon with Reverend Devon in a gimmick that I thought was stupid. I didn't care for it. But there he is. He's got the donation box and the chain around his neck, and that was his role. And how many guys have we seen come along that look like Batista? You know, these big guys, you figure, oh, they've got two left feet. You know, cosmetically, they look great, but, you know, there's probably not much else this guy can do. He'll stand there, he'll look mean, and then he'll disappear in a year. But Triple H took a liking to the guy. He took a liking to him, he took a liking to Randy Orton, and he handpicked both of them to join a little group called Evolution. And even after the two of them got hurt, because Batista had, I think, a couple of different muscle tears, and Orton had gotten hurt. I think he had an ankle injury or foot injury. Even when both guys got hurt, and they were on the shelf for a while. And if I remember correctly, there was one horrendous house show. I think they were in the ring against the Dudley Boys. And they both, Batista and Orton, I think both got injured in the same match on the same night. And I remember reading stories about Triple H visiting them in the hospital and just, I'm sure they were down on their luck. And just reassuring them, look, we believe in you guys. You're my guys. So we're going to wait. You're going to get better. And we're going to move on, you know, with what our plans are for you. And he stayed committed to them. And Batista ended up getting over on his own. You know, at a time when Randy Orton was being groomed, albeit in a very weird way. You know, the way he won the world title at SummerSlam. A month later, Triple H beat him, made him look like a fool. And then they did the concussion storyline. And remember that whole thing? There was the concussion phase of Randy Orton where his eyes would always look glazed over. He was getting like a concussion every month in storyline. Clearly, I don't want to say they soured on him, but in this time frame, late 04 into the beginning of 05, plans changed. And they saw that Batista was just organically getting over on his own, and all he was the heavy, he was the muscle sort of in the background of Evolution, but more of his personality began to show, and people just took a liking to him. They were impressed by him. This guy looked like a monster. He's like a freak. Orton was completely just demolished for a while there by the booking. They didn't do him any favors. I have no doubt that was probably the original idea, was to go to WrestleMania and have Randy Orton recapture the championship from Triple H. The fans had other ideas. They weren't as into Orton as they were into Batista. They weren't into the pretty boy as much as they were into the monster. That's just how it goes sometimes. And so Batista surpassed him in popularity. He went on to beat Triple H. He won the Royal Rumble, and he beat Triple H for the championship in what is still one of the highest grossing WrestleMania matches of all time. They did over 1 million buys for that pay-per-view, WrestleMania 21. And that was largely promoted and built off the back of Triple H and Batista. Now, you had other matches on the show. Shawn Michaels against Kurt Angle. For a lot of pure wrestling fans, that was like a dream match. But Triple H and Batista was the match that really sold that show. And along the way, Batista improved a lot. He learned his craft, and he became pretty darn good. You know, he went out there with The Undertaker at WrestleMania 23 a couple of years after that, and arguably, in my opinion, they stole the show. And they were pissed about not going on last. They were fighting for the World Heavyweight title, and instead they put Shawn Michaels, who was a replacement for Triple H, who had been injured. He tore his other quad. So they built a story around Shawn Michaels going on to WrestleMania to challenge John Cena for the WWE Championship. And that was the match that they decided to headline with at the end of the show. And Undertaker and Batista were not happy about that at all. They were not happy about playing second fiddle to Cena and Shawn Michaels. So they were like two men on a mission that night. And I don't mean Mo and Mabel. They went out there with something to prove. And they went out there and had a very good championship match. His heel turn a few years later, while it was brief, is still probably my favorite period of his career. Probably my favorite incarnation of Batista was Hollywood Batista. I don't know what he was wearing. I think I even said this at the time. You know, I don't know what the hell this guy is wearing, but I'm not about to be the one to go over and ask him or insult him. He could wear whatever he wanted. It was like this no shirt and vest, and he had the sunglasses, and I still remember that promo with John Cena where he's talking about Cena while you're going around kissing fat women and babies, or was hugging fat women and kissing babies. I'm off in the gym pumping iron or something. It was it was great, but it was so short lived. It was maybe a month. I mean, what, 2 months max, maybe. And then he lost the championship to Cena at WrestleMania. But that's still, it's a lot like Hollywood Rock. Same kind of character, right around the same time of year, heading into WrestleMania. Only lasted maybe a couple of months, and that was the end of it. Hollywood Rock, too, criminally short. And maybe my favorite incarnation of The Rock out of all of the different phases that his character went through. But then Batista comes back in 2014, and now that I think about it, I think Batista, he stuck around until May. Was he really pushing the Hollywood Batista stuff, though, until May? I don't remember. So maybe it lasted a couple of months longer than I thought. It was still short. It was still way too short. There was still, I think, a lot of mileage left in that character. But he came back in 2014. And they brought him back as a babyface at the exact wrong time. Right when the Daniel Bryan craze had been building for months after he was screwed at SummerSlam and screwed again at Hell in a Cell. Right when the Daniel Bryan craze was in full effect, because everybody rightly thought to themselves, well, clearly this is building to WrestleMania. And maybe he'll even win the Royal Rumble, because it's not like the Authority is going to gift him a championship opportunity. So he's got to go out there and he's got to overcome the odds and win the Rumble. And that's the only way. And then he'll get his title shot. What a great story. Except that wasn't the story that WWE wanted to go with, because they're idiots. Now, ultimately they did, and I'll give them credit for that. But I will forever debate people who say, well, it all worked out in the end, so hey, all hail WWE. No, they should be called out on the fact that how could they not see what a great story this was and have any other plan other than what ended up happening at WrestleMania? How they could have even thought that anything else would be a good idea is absolutely mind-boggling to me and does not speak well to their ability to tell a great story. So Batista comes back, And the rumor is he's going to win the Royal Rumble, he's going to go on to WrestleMania, he's going to beat Randy Orton, and he's going to win the World Championship. And this was a terrible idea. Any other year, maybe not so terrible. This year, 2014, terrible idea. He goes out there in the Rumble match and he gets shit on by the fans. Through no fault of his own. I felt bad for the guy. He didn't do anything wrong. And you could tell when you listen to him talk about WWE and wrestling, he's not somebody who's just coming back for a payday. He comes across as somebody who genuinely loves pro wrestling and appreciates what it has done for him and his career. And he genuinely wanted to come back, stick around for a while, and have one last run. And it was sabotaged. It was sabotaged by the fans, but really it was sabotaged by the booking. It all goes back to the decisions and the choices that WWE made. They fucked up. And Batista paid the price for it. These people wanted the Daniel Bryan story to culminate in a championship win at WrestleMania, not the old guy coming back to win the championship. That's not what they wanted. Batista against Randy Orton is not the WrestleMania main event people wanted. So he got caught in the crossfire. He ended up turning heel anyway, which he probably should have just been brought back as a heel to begin with. At least, and I know he's talked about that before. And he did the honors. Again, to his credit. It wasn't Randy Orton tapping out to Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania. Batista, who's probably twice Bryan's size. You know, not height-wise, but just, you know, even though he was smaller than he was back in his heyday, Batista was still, you know, he was still kind of a monster to look at, certainly compared to Bryan. And there he is, in the middle of the ring, tapping out to the yes lock. What a great moment. It made for one of the most memorable main event moments in WrestleMania history. And then came Batista. He stuck around a little bit longer. Hey, let's do the Evolution reunion. And he comes out on that one pay-per-view. Everyone's dressed in the same color except him. He comes out, he's decked out in blue. He's got blue trunks on. Blue knee pads, I think blue boots. And thus, Batista was born. As he was tagging with his Evolution buddies to put over the Shield. He still gets hot, by the way, about the Batista chants. Maybe he'll have a sense of humor about it if he talks about it at the Hall of Fame, but every time I've heard him talk about it or respond on Twitter to somebody, he's really, he doesn't find it humorous at all. He was greatly offended by it. Because here he is coming back and he's trying to put over these new guys, and all anybody wanted to talk about was the fact that he was wearing blue, and he doesn't see what's funny about it. I think it's funny, but he doesn't see what's funny about it. So he still gets hot about it to this day whenever somebody brings it up. But that was it. You know, after that, he left shortly thereafter, and then they shot the angle last year, the SmackDown Anniversary show, for a match with Triple H at this year's WrestleMania. You know, give me what I want. And then a new meme was born. It was the match that he has wanted for years. He would do interviews, and they would ask him, you know, what's your final match? What's your final opponent look like? Triple H. Every interview, his answer was consistent. Triple H. I want to get in there with Triple H. He wanted to put over Triple H and then retire. That was his ideal retirement, and he got it this year. Triple H is the guy who gave him his first big break. If you think about it, Triple H changed this man's life forever. If Triple H does not handpick him to be part of Evolution, who knows where he is? Who knows what he's doing today? You know, maybe he's bouncing at a bar somewhere. He's certainly not in Guardians of the Galaxy, I wouldn't think. Maybe he's doing little shitty independent movies that aren't that good. Who knows? I mean, not only did Triple H pick him for Evolution over Mark Jindrak, who had already been selected. He was the original pick. They replaced him with Batista. Not only that, but he got 3 straight pay-per-view wins over Triple H in 2005 to really solidify him, if he wasn't already, as a top guy in the company. I mean, that's just not something that Triple H did back then. How many people did Triple H put over that strongly and decisively? Literally, pay-per-view after pay-per-view after pay-per-view, right on into the summer of 2005. So it would make sense that he would want to repay that debt that he, I guess, felt that he owed to him. And so this year he got the closure that he wanted. And now he's he's carved out a nice career for himself in Hollywood. So I just think it's a great story. As far as who inducts him, Triple H would have made sense. Dana Brooke would make sense, doing nothing but reading all of her tweets to him and all of his tweets to her. That could be her entire speech, just nothing but their tweets back and forth to one another, with a little Marvin Gaye or Barry White playing in the background. I'd be okay with that. Instead, now this is not official, but Batista has now gone on Twitter and said he has personally requested that. Now, I would have actually thought if he was going to personally request a friend or somebody, he would have gone with Titus O'Neil, because he and Titus are very tight. But he said that he has personally requested that Fit Finlay be the one to induct him into the Hall of Fame. He said, for personal reasons, I have requested that Fit Finlay induct me into the WWE Hall of Fame. I'm sure that anyone who knows Finlay will not question my request. Hell, I think Finlay deserves his own Hall of Fame induction. Yeah, not just for his in-ring career, but all the work. I mean, how many times over the years have we heard people in WWE, or some of the women, the divas, back in the Divas era in WWE, credit Finlay with helping them and being a huge supporter behind the scenes of the women, and always being there, earlier in the day in the ring to help, teach them and guide them and coach them. He gets a lot of credit for the rise of that women's division in that mid to late 2000s period, and maybe even beyond, in WWE. So for both those things, I think he would be worthy of his own Hall of Fame induction. Here's the question. Is WWE going to grant his request? Now, they didn't when Jerry Lawler said that he wanted Lance Russell to induct him into the Hall of Fame, because Lance Russell was the one who got him into wrestling. Without Lance Russell, it's kind of a similar thing I was talking about with Triple H. Jerry Lawler may not have gone on to have the career that he had. So, and Lance Russell, I mean, maybe nationally he isn't such a well-known figure. Certainly in that Memphis area, though, he was a legendary voice and a legendary, influence. So Lawler wanted Lance Russell to induct him when he went in 2007, 2006, 2007, I think, is when Lawler and JR went in. Kevin Dunn, supposedly, as the story goes, ixnayed the idea because nobody's going to know who Lance Russell is. And so instead he got William Shatner. I'm sure Kevin Dunn was so happy to get William Shatner, Captain Kirk, to do the induction, who did one television segment back in 1994, I think it was, or 5, on the King's Court, where he gave Lawler a monkey flip. And so this turned into, hey, let's have him induct Jerry Lawler for the body of his work into the Hall of Fame, because everybody knows who William Shatner is, right? Oh, wow, yeah. I'm sure they got tons of extra publicity for having William Shatner at the fucking Hall of Fame. So that's just one example. I would not think they would really want to make Batista upset. Batista, I think, would be a lot more vocal if he was upset than Jerry Lawler probably would have been back then. So I think he'll get what he wants. I think in the end, if he wants Finlay, then it's gonna be Fit Finlay doing the induction. Give him what he wants.